I got my notes, check. Pepsi, check. Sunglasses, check. Hat, check. Thick skin, check. And sources, check. Let's go. Golden Blue back with another video just for you, the college football fan. So if you are a college football fan, hit the like and subscribe button and ring that bell so you know when I go live. We also have a great Patreon page. Go check it out. A lot of great perks over there. I call my Patreons the shot callers because my Patreons will decide which game we're going to live stream and watch with Golden Blue Dude. And my Patreons get to be involved in the score prediction contest. Every single week I pick out a game, and the Patreon who's closest to the actual score is $20 every single week. You can win as many times as you want. The higher the Patreon you are, the more guesses you get per week. We all know the old saying, when the cat's away, the mice will play. What does that mean? That means when the predator, aka the cat, is away, then the prey, aka the mice, they're going to create their own fun. They're going to think that they own the joint. They're going to run things. And that's exactly what's happening in conference realignment. The Big Ten and the SEC are saying, hey, we're going to close our doors for expansion for right now for 2022, and we're going to stand pat. What's happened? Well, the mice, aka Pac-12, Big 12, and ACC, they're creating their own drama. Well, for the Pac-12, it's getting picked apart. Sorry, I don't see the Pac-12 surviving this. I think they're going to get picked apart, and they're either going to have to merge with the Mountain West, or the remaining teams are just going to flat out join the Mountain West. Sorry, Pac-12 fans. The Pac-12 has its days numbered. But for the ACC and the Big 12, they're still very much in the fight. The question is, who's going to win it? And yesterday, I gave the pros and the cons, but that was before some interesting news popped up. The first interesting news, and I did make a brief video on this, I didn't have a bunch of time to make a proper video, so I'm going to talk about it more, is ESPN and the ACC actually talking about renegotiating their TV deal. That is massive news. That is incredible news, because all this conference realignment with the ACC always hits a brick wall. What is that brick wall? The ACC grant of rights. It makes it difficult for teams to leave the ACC, but it also makes it difficult for teams to enter the ACC. So if ESPN and the ACC come and they talk and they renegotiate that TV deal, and teams can leave and teams can come. And the thing that baffles me is the Pac-12, that they don't learn their lesson. First, there was the alliance with the Big Ten and the ACC. Then the Big Ten grabs USC and UCLA. So, okay, we'll kick the Big Ten out. But we're still in a loose alliance with the ACC. Guess who the ACC is affiliated with? Pac-12. They're affiliated with ESPN. Same with the Big Ten. Why do you think the Big 12 was never a part of that alliance? Because Fox is smarter than that. They don't want to be in alliance with a competitor. They know that the competitor is going to try to take advantage of them, and they will be outnumbered by the conferences that are affiliated with their competitor. You didn't learn your lesson. You're in this loose alliance with the ACC, and the ACC, they're looking at you. They're wanting to see what teams can we get out of the Pac-12. And we heard that the ACC is like, no, this is looser than you realize. We just want certain teams. I'm thinking about Oregon, Washington, maybe a Utah, maybe take a peek at the Arizona schools, maybe Colorado. They just want to pick teams off from the Pac-12. And the Pac-12 was thinking maybe the ACC can keep us safe from the Big 12, because the Big 12 is also looking at members of the Pac-12 to add to their fold. They're looking at the Arizona schools, Arizona and Arizona State. They're looking at Colorado. They're looking at Utah. And yes, they are looking at Oregon and Washington. And with the Big Ten and the SEC closing their doors of expansion for 2022, those names are up for grabs. Now for the ACC, affiliated with ESPN, who else is affiliated with ESPN? The SEC. So ESPN wants to keep teams in the family. So if they come to the table to renegotiate the TV deal, they can move teams from the ACC to the SEC, and they stay in the family. And then on top of that, they can go out and get other teams. Maybe teams from the Pac-12, the teams they mentioned, Oregon, Washington, Utah, Colorado, maybe the Arizona schools, and teams from the Big 12. And Notre Dame plays a part in this as well, because they've expressed extreme interest in joining the ACC full-time as a full member in 2025. And then the Big Ten came a call, and I was like, there is no way Notre Dame is turning down Big Ten money. Apparently, for now, they are turning down Big Ten money. I was like, why would they do that? I know they're talking about joining the ACC in 2025, but that is a major, major pay cut. Well, if the ACC and ESPN renegotiate that TV deal, comes within 70-80% of the SEC's or Big X's contracts, well, schools like North Carolina, Miami, Virginia Tech, all those schools will actually want to stay in the ACC, and that could draw Notre Dame in. And Notre Dame could still keep their home games with NBC, renegotiate that TV contract in 2025, and then their road games would be with ESPN. So they would be making money from NBC and ESPN. Plus, ESPN would be making even more money because Notre Dame is a full-time member of the ACC. So this affects everybody. This is a major deal. This is the hurdle that I couldn't figure out how the ACC would get around as far as if they were going to expand. Because y'all know me, I've been talking about Notre Dame and West Virginia to the ACC for about a year now. But the one hurdle, the wall that it kept hitting was the grant of rights. Well, with ESPN and the ACC expressing interest in renegotiating that, that would clear that hurdle, that would clear that wall, and watch out Big 12, the ACC might come a calling. But on the flip side, it's not all bad news for the Big 12. The new commissioner, Brett Yormark, great hire for the Big 12. Today, he said the Big 12 is open for business. So the Big 12 is looking to expand. Make no mistake about that. They are going to look at Colorado, Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, Washington, and Oregon. They might know already that the ACC plans to try to do a little mini raid on them. Let's be honest, the Big 12 is used to being raided. I mean, the first go-around, they lost Nebraska, Colorado, Texas A&M, and Missouri. They gained West Virginia and TCU, but that was lose 4, gain 2. In this go-around, they lost Oklahoma and Texas, gained BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. So lost 2, gained 4. All in all, lost 6, gained 6. But the brands that they lost were far more valuable than the brands that they gained. So they got to avoid that. But they know that it could be coming. The ACC could come in and grab, say, a West Virginia. A Cincinnati? They just joined the Big 12 and the ACC could be interested in Cincinnati? Yeah, they could be. UCF? Yeah, it's possible. Houston? Yes. That's 3 of your 4 new members that the ACC could be looking into, and then West Virginia. And then there's Oklahoma State. And we heard that Oklahoma State and the SEC were talking. Either way, that's a win-win for ESPN. Whether the SEC grabs Oklahoma State or the ACC grabs Oklahoma State. As long as the money is much better than the Big 12, Oklahoma State could go to the ACC or the SEC. That's why the ACC and ESPN renegotiating this TV deal is a big deal. You could attract big brands like that from the Big 12. And Oklahoma State, a Baylor, those are probably the 2 biggest brands in the Big 12. You could look at an Iowa State or Kansas State. But if I were the ACC, if you're looking at teams in the Big 12, you're looking at West Virginia, number 1, of course, geographic fit. They have a great fan base, the number 1 fan base in the new Big 12. Look up the numbers, generate a lot of TV revenue. Number 2, right behind Kansas, and that's only because of basketball. So West Virginia is a very, very valuable brand in the Big 12, and it fits geographically. But you also could go after Baylor and Oklahoma State. Those are the 3 must-gets. If you're going after the Big 12 and you want to hurt the Big 12, then those are the 3 brands you need to go after first. Then after that, maybe you could look at a Houston, maybe you could look at a Cincinnati, maybe an Iowa State, Kansas State, Texas Tech, whoever. And for the Big 12, by adding Utah, Colorado, Arizona State, maybe a Washington, Oregon, even if you lose those brands, you're gaining some pretty good brands, and the Big 12 would kind of shift more towards a West Coast conference. So they might end up actually being the new Pac-12. Without USC and UCLA, they would be in the Big 10. But overall, the general geographics, they would be the new Pac-12 when it comes to where they are on the map. So the Big 12 is trying to position themselves. No matter what, we have to gain people. Whether we lose these brands or we keep these brands, we need to expand. And if we do lose some brands, it will soften the blow like it has done in the past. What the Big 12 can't do is keep adding group of 5 teams and expect to keep Power 5 status. That can't happen. The next time you expand, you need to grab Power 5 teams. And that's why I think it's a good idea for the Big 12 to grab teams out of the Pac-12 right now while you can. Because make no mistake about it, the ACC also has their eyes on those teams as well. Utah has expressed that we're not quite sure if we want to go to the Big 12. We know the ACC is interested in us as well. We might go to the ACC. So you need to lock down the biggest brands out of the Pac-12 right now, Big 12. That way, if you do lose those brands, it's not that big of a problem and you still look like a Power 5 conference. The 2 teams that this does hurt, and that's Memphis and Boise State. Before all the USC and UCLA thing happened, Boise State and Memphis were positioning themselves to where they could possibly get an invite to a Power 5 conference. Memphis could go to either the ACC or the Big 12, and Boise State could go to either the Pac-12 or the Big 12. Well, it looks like the Pac-12 is a sinking ship, so Boise State's only option is the Big 12. Problem with that is now they're not the best option. Now there's a bunch of teams ahead of them. They went from the top of the list for the Big 12 to probably near the bottom of the list just because they're not a Power 5 team. No disrespect to Boise State fans, none at all. You guys have a great brand, but you're not a Power 5 team, so that does knock you down on the list. Same thing for Memphis. They're renovating their football stadium, putting a lot of money. The renderings looked really, really good, positioning themselves to get an invite to either ACC or the Big 12. Well, ever since UCLA and USC decided to go to the Big 10, now there's other options for the ACC and the Big 12, and Memphis was knocked down on the list as well because they're not a power team. So there's a lot of change still going to happen. Now the Big 10 and the SEC, they're done. So the biggest changes that we'll see, the ACC and the Big 12. And it all depends on how fast the ACC and ESPN can renegotiate that TV deal, because they're just talking about it right now. In the meantime, the Big 12 could expand and grow their brand and make their value go up. And then it would be more difficult to get teams out of the Big 12 because the contract is even better than what you had to compete with before they expanded. So the ACC and ESPN need to come to a renegotiation as soon as possible if they want any chance of getting any teams out of the Big 12. Y'all let me know in the comments section. Number one, do you think ESPN and the ACC are able to renegotiate their TV deal in a timely fashion? Number two, if they can, do you see them going after Big 12 teams? And do you think they'll succeed? And finally, how high should the sense of urgency be for the Big 12 to grab those Pac-12 teams now? I look forward to your comments. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next show.